Listen, Muse, I have been planning on talking about something particular for a few weeks now. This particular thing is a really cool technique I use in my writing process. However, there's always an however. I had somebody reach out to me and wanted me to address something in particular. So I felt compelled to actually do that. So once again, I'm going to bump that topic that we shall discuss next week. And I know I said I promised last week. I'm going to have to say it again. But that's just the way this particular cookie crumbles. And boy, does it crumble. But it is still delicious. Anyway, so I was talking with an editor that I work with, and that editor was shocked at how quickly I write. And she said, "You should write an article on how to write quickly, to write efficiently." And I thought, well, maybe that would be best addressed with My Muse. Now, I'm going to talk about two different things I write, both fiction and nonfiction. And hopefully, in the end, you will have at least an inkling as to how you can speed up your writing a bit. Maybe. Most of the things I talk about are very much in tune with me, with who I am. And I do things differently than most people. That is kind of by design, but also kind of out of a place of ignorance, I guess, because I wasn't trained as a writer. It took me about 20 years to get where I am now. So anyway, let's first talk about fiction. And I'm going to use Defying Gravity as an example because it truly is a perfect example of how I write quickly. I have talked ad nauseum about the way I write, about the whole cause and effect style of writing, and that on a more less tangible subject, more ethereal subject, how I let the universe tell me what to write. That's really important. And Defying Gravity will help to illustrate that. I knew that I came up with the idea for Defying Gravity some time ago, but I had other things that I had to write. And by the time it came around to me writing Defying Gravity, I was so excited about writing this particular book. And that is kind of indicative of how I write. I only ever write what I want to write. I don't write things because I have a deadline. I don't write things because I think it's something that the people want to read. So it's kind of telling that I write for myself. And when I write something, and never before had this been more apparent than when I wrote Defying Gravity, I become absolutely and completely consumed with what I'm writing. So much so that at times it's all I think about. And I get to a point when I'm writing a book that I absolutely have to finish what I'm writing. And everything I do is geared toward that goal, finishing that book. And I think about it day and night. So what happens is, because of the way I write, because I'm a puzzler or a pantser, whatever you want to say, I I will be writing. I usually write all my fiction at night. I'll be writing my session. I'll have my writing session that night, and I'll start writing, and I'll keep going and keep going till I get above 1,000 words, and I stop. Sometimes I will, and this has happened a couple of times in the book that I'm writing now, and it happened one really significant time in Defying Gravity, where I have ended a writing session with a problem. And I do that intentionally. I don't force a problem, but when I'm writing and I reach 1,000 words, which is my minimum per day, sometimes I'll go beyond that. And when I run into a problem, I stop. I immediately stop. And I say, that's it for the day. Because what that does is it allows me to live with that problem for about 24 hours. So by the time I come up to that next writing session, I have already figured out how to get through that problem. And I told the story of Defying Gravity a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, I don't remember. But what I had done was I had written something that kind of put the kibosh on the driving force of the story. But I knew I had to do it. For some reason, I had to do that. I won't tell you the reason because I want you to read the book. And the next day, I went on my run, chugga, 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 and I was listening to a song, and the song pretty much told me exactly how I get around that problem. So by the time I came into my next writing session, I knew exactly what I needed to do. So how this works is that I write, I come into a problem, stop, figure out the problem next day, come back to my writing session, I write, cause a problem, and wash, rinse, repeat. So I never experience one of those instances where you're writing, you stop, you go, oh my gosh, what have I done? I don't know. I've written myself into a corner. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Because if that happens in the middle of a writing session, everything comes to a halt. Your efficiency just bottoms out. Right? So, yes, of course, you can't always predict when the problems are going to happen. I could be writing, and then 500 words into my writing session, I come into a problem. However, I tend to drive the narrative in such a way that the big things don't happen in the middle of a writing session. The big things happen either at the beginning or the end of a writing session. So a writing session tends to go like this. If you were to define it as an arc, it would go big thing, scene in between. So you string enough of those together and everything works out. Now, of course, that doesn't mean you have to have a problem come about at the end of a writing session or the beginning of a writing session. Actually, the beginning of a writing session, you don't throw a problem into it. You have resolved the problem and you're fixing the problem throughout the writing session. But don't think that you have to have a big problem occur. I can string together a week's worth of writing sessions and never have a problem. And, the ebb and flow of the story moves along swimmingly. And then eventually I know that something's going to happen where I'm going to cause a problem, and I just make sure that it happens at the end of a session so I have the next day to figure it out. So by the time I go into the next session, I'm good to go. Now, here's another really weird quirk that I have that has helped me quite a bit. And it is, a lot of writers that I have told this to have said, why do you do that? You shouldn't do that. It's counterproductive, but it's not. It really isn't. And trust me on this. So sometimes what I will do If I'm in a writing session and I'm in a groove and everything's going great and just words are just flowing out of me like booze at a Catholic wedding, if I've reached that 1,000, I have to reach that 1,000 word mark. I'll tell you why in a minute. Once I've reached that, sometimes I'll keep going, and everything's just really clicking and really clicking. Then I stop. Because what happens is I have stopped the narrative at a point where everything is going really well. The words are just coming out naturally, right? Because what that means is I'm writing exactly what the story needs. It's what the universe has told me to write. That's what's happening. Everything is clicking. The cause and effect is working. And I stop. What happens though? Next night, when I pick that up, I'm already in a groove. All I do is I go back, because this is how my process works. I'll write 1,000+ words. The next day I go back and I read the 1,000+ words to get me back into that groove and to edit as I go. And as soon as I reach the end of that previous night's 1,000 words, I'm back into that groove and I can pick it right up. And it works really well when I have left off at a point where everything was going smoothly and working really well. Because what happens is, if I end at a point where things are kind of clunky and rough, then what I have to do the next night is I have to smooth all of that out. And then it's going to take me a little time to ramp back up and get back up to speed. And speed is really important to me. And it's one of the reasons why I write the way I write. I write very cause and effect. It's very organic. I just let the words come out of me. Yeah? I don't censor myself as I write. I just open my eyes and my mind and I just barf it all out. And knowing that the next night I'm going to go through it and clean up anything that's doesn't jibe with what I'm writing. Now, let me go back to Defying Gravity, okay? Defying Gravity is a very, very personal story for me. Because what it allowed me to do is relive a part of my life that I cherish very much. And I sort of took this period of my life and I put it in a box, thinking I'll open that box up when I need to revisit it. I need to go back to that happy place. That happy place was a production of Cabaret that I was in. And with Defying Gravity, I was able to just open that box up and let it all out. It was incredibly familiar to me. That whole world was I knew that world coming into the book. Now, granted, a lot of things happened during the writing of that book. A lot of things changed, and I embellished, because when I went through it in real life, there wasn't magic realism involved, and I layered on the magic realism during the writing of the book. But I knew that story so well. And when you know a story so well, it makes it incredibly easy to write. So a lot of times when you, Muse, give me an idea for a story, sometimes it's a simple image. So I go to my to be written file and I might write a couple of words, a couple of descriptive words for that image, but at the same time, I flesh it out a little bit. I flesh it out through my filters. So I don't have just 2 words that describe what I want to write. I have a paragraph a really engaging paragraph that describes what the book is about, where the book is going to go, what may be the main character, what drives the main character. And that right there is crucial to efficient writing is knowing what drives the main character. If you know specifically what drives the main character, you know how that he or she is going to navigate his world. And you'll never have to stop and go, what would this character do in this situation? Instead, what you wind up having to do is say, okay, what can I throw in? What can I throw in the way of the character getting what he or she wants? And then it's just a matter of you creating obstacles. And that makes for incredibly efficient writing. Knowing what the character wants, what drives that character forward, and then just throwing little speed bumps in their way. Speed bumps or hurdles or whatever. Mountains. Whatever you have to throw in the way of the character getting what they want. If you don't know what the character wants, if you don't know what's driving that character forward, your writing is going to slow down to a slog. So make sure that you write what you enjoy. Develop a process that works for your style and stick to it. One of the things I decided a long time ago, and this was actually some advice that Edward Lee gave me, who was a splatterpunk author. He told me if you write a single page a day, by the end of a year, you've got a 365-page novel. Well, I took that and made it my own and said, if I write 1,000 words a day, by the end of 2 months, I have a 60,000-word novel. And a 60,000-word novel is a complete novel. Now, granted, some genres need longer, like fantasy. You might be doubling that for a fantasy book. Defying Gravity was 70,000 words, 72,000 words, I think. So it kind of depends upon the story you need to tell. But you could tell a complete story within 60,000 words. Okay? So, and it only takes 2 months to write that. And then, of course, it takes 2 or 3 months to edit and proof it. But that's beside the point. So that's really how I am able to write fiction very quickly. As for nonfiction, it's really simple. You have a goal, and that goal is the end point. The goal meaning I need to explain to the readers how to do X. And I have to know how to do X. I have to know it really well. So once you know how to do X, you start from the beginning and say why you want to be able to do X, what X will do for you. Here's how you do X. It's kind of formulaic, but in nonfiction writing, formula is good because it gives a reader, it meets the reader's expectations of what you've set, and it brings a consistency to your writing. And in nonfiction, that's good. It's just like how you were taught to write in high school or elementary school with your thesis and all antithesis and all of that. You just simply figure out what the formula that works best for your style. Condense it down so it's efficient, so you're not adding a bunch of unnecessary verbiage. Get to the point. Don't write this multi-paragraph intro, because a lot of the times readers just want to get to the steps. They want to know what you're going to do. They want to know why it's good, and they want to know the steps. It's that simple. And you can bang out 800 to 1,000 words in 45 minutes like that. 45 minutes to an hour, sometimes even faster, depending on how quickly you type. That's kind of my formula for nonfiction. And it works especially well for when you're trying to describe how to do something. Now, if you're not trying to describe how to do something, then you need to, there's a lot more involved. But most of the nonfiction, 90% of the nonfiction that I write is how to do things. And I've been doing that since 1999. So I got really good at it. And that also helped me to become very efficient at writing fiction. Because after a while, you learn how to kind of lay down that line between too few and too many words, and then you just weave in and out of it. Because there are some times in fiction where you need some extra verbiage, not for padding, but for description, for to set a mood, to help a reader get into the mind and the heart of a character. And then there are times when you just want things to be really efficient, when you don't want the words to get in the way of telling the story. And the longer that you write, and this is kind of crazy sounding, but the longer that you write, the more you tend to live over in that area where you don't want the words to get in the way of the story. You still need to write in such a way where it's unique to you, but you don't want to get over, people call it purple prose. You know, you spend 2 or 3 paragraphs talking about describing a chair. Anyway, I've rambled on way too long, which is ironic considering I was talking about efficiency. But hopefully, this has helped someone figure out how to write quickly. Or not quickly, but efficiently. Maybe, maybe not. And next time, I'm going to show you a trick that I use, that I borrowed from the world of music, that gives a little color to my work. Anyway, thank you for being here, Muse. Thank you for being my muse. Thank you for inspiring me in the way that you do, because without you, I would not be doing this. Or I might be doing this, but I might not be doing it as well as I do it. That sounded arrogant. I apologize for that, because I am not arrogant. Anyway, thank you, Muse. And as usual, you, my friend, are awesome.